About this love. About this. About this love. About this love. Love.
Hey, Charel and Dale here.
What's up? What's up?
We are the hosts of the About This Love podcast, and we're back with season 2. If you had not heard the first 5 episodes of season 1, we will leave a link to them in the description box. So check them out when you get a chance. Also, as a bonus, we will release a 6th episode that has never been released before. So that'll be up there as well. Okay, so now that we're past the formalities, let's address the elephant on the air of why we took a break from About This Love podcast.
For almost 2 years.
Almost 2 years. Yeah, Dale, you actually had to go and look back, right?
Yeah.
Now, he was like, no, we put something out earlier this year. Nah, brother, we didn't. No.
I think the last episode was like sometime in April 2018.
Yeah, so, okay, a little over a year and some change.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Mr. Skinner, why were we taking a break from podcasting?
I mean, just a lot of things going on in life. We really wanted to focus on our marriage and our relationship, a little more, address a lot of the issues we had in our marriage. Not that it was anything like major, but
it was major. It was major.
I mean, when I say major, I'm thinking about like infidelity and things like that.
No,
to me, that's major.
But Dale,
being able to get money and like hiding somewhere, how to stash some money. To me, that's major. You know what I'm saying? It was nothing like that.
Well, not, of course not. But in the beginning of a marriage, like everything is major because we don't really have that relationship solidified yet because we're just starting out. Like, there's people who start their quote unquote ministry or whatever, like right after they get married, what is it, a marriage ministry or something?
Which is very foolish, by the way.
Well, I mean,
continue on.
They feel led by the Lord to have a ministry and to really minister to those who either want to be married or want to be in a relationship. And so it's almost like I look at those couples and I'm just like, man, I looked up to them before I was married, but now I'm like, how did they do it? And then outside of their platform, did they take the time to really address like the differences? I mean, because there's a lot of cultural things that come up in marriages when you first get married. What else? Difference in how your upbringing.
Yeah.
Yeah. It makes it hard, even trying to mesh 2 lives together. I mean, I feel like even for people who've been in a long-term relationship prior to being married, like once you get married, it's just a whole nother slew of things. I think responsibility that God puts on you.
And plus the other things that could and do pop up in a marriage that you really don't expect, whether it's like myself, when we did our podcast, I was working in Baltimore. It's not the case anymore. So just having the difference between me having a 5-minute commute versus now having an hour commute every day to work. So things just change that you really can't predict.
Well, that, and then I know some people, their goal is to, like, as soon as they get married, it's almost like, okay, we have the wedding, we get the house, we have the kids, and let's say they have trouble with conceiving, and that could, I don't know, it could be like, Lord, the woman you sent me, like, what's going on here? Or didn't you say you knew someone who, said that they were no longer happy in their marriage and they were like 6 months in or something like that?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to put nobody on blast, but
like I said before, like, it's just oftentimes, people think that they want to get married, and they probably do. But I think most of the time it's just a timing, because somebody actually had asked me, I think earlier this year, am I happy with marriage? I said yes. I am happy. We're happy with being married. I said, but if I think if I would have been, if I would have just paused, I probably would have waited a year and a half to get married. Not that I don't enjoy being married, but oftentimes like I said, when you're married, things kind of come at you that you're kind of forced to deal with at that point. And when it's you and another person and a child, you can't just like, well, I'll get to it when I get to it. No, you actually have to, how to address it. And oftentimes, things may take a while to, you and your spouse to actually walk through with the Lord, which is why, the break from the podcast,
Everything is in peaches and roses and cream, right?
It's all good. Like when I look back over difficult situations, I'm actually encouraged, and I actually think the Lord. Like I was thinking the Lord last night, because when you look back over just things that the Lord walked you through, and in the moment, it seemed like you was like Rashek, Meshach, and Abednego, like
Well, you was who?
a Rashek, a Meshach, and Abednego when you was just in the fire. You was in the furnace, and you didn't seem like it was a way out of it. But when fast forward to now, when you look back, you're like, oh man, God was really, really there, with me, walking me through the process that seemed difficult, and it wasn't really, difficult, to an extent. I think
At the
oftentimes,
time.
well, I think we make things harder than what they have to be. I always like giving the analogy. When I was a kid, my mom or my pops would be like, "Yo, I'm gonna give you 2 licks. If you don't move, it'll be over with. But if you move, it'll be longer." And you of course trying to avoid getting hit. So what was supposed to be 2 hits end up being five or six. So it's just you making things more difficult than what they have to be because of your attitude and the way you view the situation.
So I want to go back to something you said like a moment ago. You said, well, you would tell people, or if someone had asked you about marriage, you would tell them like, yeah, I would take a year or take some time to think about it. And why is that? Like, what do you think would change in the year, or what do you think would change in that time? Because I know why I would tell somebody not to get married, and it's not that we're against marriage, but you know it's almost like one of those it's one of those things where it's like hindsight is 2020, but now that we're in marriage, it's like, man, it's a whole nother level of responsibility. So do
Yeah,
you think that year off for you would have, or not year off,
the extra year.
the extra year of us still courting each other before marriage, would that have been, you know what? I noticed I probably need to get, is that a financial thing, or is it I need to walk with the Lord to kind of get my heart together.
You know what? Like now that I'm thinking about it, when like they say what hindsight is
It's 2020.
2020.
Wait, you adding on your own
Is it,
numbers?
I
It's
forget.
50/50.
Is it 50/50? Is it 2020? Whatever it is. Whatever, however the saying goes. But when I was just thinking about it, I was like, yeah, well, I can say that now that I'm married. But if you're talking to somebody that's not married and you're saying this to them, they still won't understand. It's like some things you just don't understand until you're actually like in it. So like, so
Yeah.
even if I tell somebody, hey man, you might want to take a year, or, year and a half to really think about, really consider it, they probably still wouldn't do it because some things you just can't see the totality of a thing until you're actually in it. So, but for me, yeah, I would have probably I probably would have taken extra year and a half to just walk with the Lord, through some things that I dealt with, which probably brought more chaos or more stress to the marriage. But and again, I don't think that's something that's gonna be avoided anyways. I mean, because
That's what I was
if
about
it's
to
not
say.
this, it'll be something else. But oftentimes when you two people in love and you're looking to get married, you do not understand the totality of difficulties that you will have to walk through with your spouse, things that happened to them that preceded you. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, that is
Mhm.
just the reality. That is just the reality of marriage. You have to deal with your husband and or wife's insecurities or fears, and you might be like, man, really, this is a joke, or really, this is. But it's like, unfortunately, you really can't view it that way because one person's insecurities, you really would have to walk with them in the Lord and just deal with it. You know what I'm saying? And deal with it until the Lord brings correction or brings healing to that area. Unfortunately. And when I say deal with it, I'm not saying, well, just deal with it, just put up. But no, you really would have to
Mhm.
deal with it with grace and love, and kind of walk them through that and kind of be understanding, even if you naturally wouldn't understand.
Can
So,
I give you an example?
nah,
I'll give you an example
go,
anyway,
go
because you
ahead.
know what is that scripture that scripture about considering a man first considers the cost before he builds a home.
It's in Luke. Jesus says before a man build a house, will he first not consider the cost?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and that is the scripture I am referring to, but a lot of times I think that when we look at, I don't know, like it could be an age thing, and it could also be It could just be a personal preference. But a lot of times I hear people say like, oh yeah, this may be the one, I want to get married. Or like, of course, on my timeline, because as a millennial, we get our news from Facebook. So on my Facebook timeline, and not that it's news, but a lot of times I do see females that I have gone to school with, and they're just like, well, they're taking these different quiz, and I'm doing air quotes, but they're
You put
taking
people on
different.
blast.
I know you're not talking. You be the man. Well, who there? Who over there? Well, who that? Was I there? Was that cousin Pookie in
But
there?
I don't say.
Yes, you
You
do.
know, went to high school with.
I said school. I ain't say high school. See, you done busted them
She
out.
putting y'all on blast.
I'm not putting anyone on blast, but I do pray for. Like seriously, I see these young ladies and young men too, and I pray for them because I came up with them essentially, and I'm just kind of like, wow, Lord, did I hit the lottery? And I don't feel as though like, oh, I hit the blessing lottery or anything like that, and I don't think there's anything that you can really do to I guess like, oh, I'm married or oh, I'm not married and this is my life or whatever, or I hit the jackpot with God. But, I look at them and they just they talk about how they truly want to be married. And I think in their hearts I think in their minds they want to be married, but in their hearts it's almost like, well, I'm to this age and, I'm still, all I got to show is my career. Or all I got to show is, my different travels. And, I want to come home to somebody. Or I see everyone I went to high school with, they all married or, having kids. And it's like, well, it's just me. Another girl's night out, huh? And I'm just kind of like, the grass is greener on the other side, right? They may look at some people who, and of course, the worst thing to do is compare yourself to someone's highlight reel online, but I really just feel as though, and I do pray for, like I said, I pray for my peers because, a lot of times I do believe that they might not be looking at the picture of marriage, of relationship in its fullness.
Yeah, from a sober mindset.
Yeah, from a sober mindset. So the next time like someone comes up to them, and they seem like a good candidate, whatever their list may be, whatever like marks the checks the boxes off, is almost like, yeah, well, he said he want to be with me and he want to, get married, or he proposed, and it's like, so I'm gonna go ahead for it. And I'm like, it almost takes me back. Like I take a step back and I'm like, well, Lord, did I rush into this marriage, with you, Dale? Did I rush into the marriage? And I'm just kind of like, well, there was a lot of things that the Lord really, for me personally, my personal walk with the Lord before Dale was even on the scene, I was fasting and praying, not for a man, not for a husband, but just for things to just make sense and have order in my life. And I think a lot of times we want a relationship, but we don't want order. We don't want, we don't want to submit. We don't want structure. And sometimes, when it's just you by yourself being a loose cannon, I think that's all well and dandy because it's just you.
It's not well and dandy.
I mean, it's
because you'll bring that stuff into a relationship.
But that's what I was about to say. That's what I was about to say. Like, it's all well and dandy when it's just you, but then when you're in a relationship with someone else, or now you have kids, or now you have a husband, now you have a wife, it's like, well, I've been living this way. I've been going out. I've been, doing A, B, C, D, and E, and now it's no longer working. It's no longer functioning. And I think a lot of times, people who want to get into a marriage situation, who wants to be married, they think that they're just going to continue to live their lives and not have to address things. Like prime example, I feel like a lot of times the people who go out constantly, for me personally, I feel like they're looking for things. I could be wrong, but it's just like, how much partying can you really do every Friday through Saturday, or Monday through Friday, or whenever, whatever works for your work schedule or whatever works for you? How much partying can you do before you say, okay, do I like the party? Do I like the drugs? Do I like the people? Is this a place where I go and socialize? Or when do we sit back and address, okay, Lord, I feel like I'm lonely at home, and that's why I go out so much. you know?
I mean, I think if we're honest, and this is like people in general, you white, black, Asian, Chinese, whatever you are. I think if we're honest, a lot of people, a, a lot of people really don't ever address it. Some do, like some actually do, because when I have conversations with people that I know, young and middle age, because it's not just young people that's out there drinking and going to the club and stuff like that. It's cats I know that's like 40 some years old, and I'd be like, man, you still you still going to the club and sleep with different girls at the age, like you don't want to settle down and get married. So I think that, I mean, it can last a whole lifetime of you just not really sitting down with yourself, being honest, asking yourself really hard, serious questions. You know what I'm saying? It's funny because well, not funny, but there's a scripture in the Bible. I believe it's First Corinthians, where Paul tells the church of Corinthians, he says, if you judge yourself, God won't have to. And I don't think he's saying like God won't judge me, but I think what he's saying is, if I actually sit down and look at myself in the mirror and really like ask myself or address the things that are deep within my heart that I'm not willing to address, God won't have to. If I'm honest and I go like, hey God, I'm my heart is hardened, I'm bitter, or I'm still bitter from the last relationship, but actually address the issue, maybe I won't be, in the club, strip club, throwing money at girls. I don't know, but anyways, I did want to say, this is really the purpose of this podcast. The purpose of this podcast is just to really encourage people, and to provoke people to thought. Now, I'm not saying these are things you probably never think about or never thought to ask yourself. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is, oftentimes when you hear something again and again and again, it's like, oh man, maybe I should really, maybe that's really food for thought. Maybe I really should, reevaluate my life and see what I'm doing, or what I need to do differently. So this is the purpose of this podcast, is just to encourage the culture. We want to encourage you, and provoke you, and encourage you and provoke you again. That's the purpose.
Oh, that's it. Just to encourage and provoke and poke and but no, no, I mean, it's funny you say, well, it's not funny you say that, but I'm glad that you said that, because really, when we sit back and think about why we wanted to start a podcast, right? It was almost like, well, because the Lord has put on our heart that there's a need, there's a need for I feel like there's conversations that are not being had, but people are feeling it. I feel like being lonely, I think there's a high rate of suicide, like especially amongst our peers, and it's becoming younger and younger. And I think
depression too.
Well, yeah, and depression and drug use, that's increasing as well. Not that, like, remember I told you a couple months ago, I was like, man, I feel like we're living back in like the 70s, where drugs, sex, just like living that wild life, that party lifestyle supersedes anything else. And I just feel like structure and family and, just being okay with living your life, and not being okay with living your life being wild, but being okay with having order and not living every day with chaos. I think that those conversations aren't really happening as much. Or those conversations need to happen. I'm not sure if they are happening, but I just feel like the majority isn't talking about it. And so I feel like the Lord has put on our heart to talk about it, and give encouragement to those who are seeking, just seeking a different way, want to hear something different, don't want to turn on the radio and just hear, sleep with that person, or go out and party and drink.
Oh. Shoot everybody on the block, you know what I'm saying? Kill them all.
Exactly.
Something just ridiculous music, ridiculous crap.
I mean, yeah, after a while, we get numb to it. After a while, it's like it just being sobered up, just being sobering. We wanted this podcast to be something that just, that resonates with those who really want to have some sort of order in their life. I mean, shoot, I wanted to go back to something you said again earlier, was just about how people don't want to take the time to, judge themselves.
Reevaluate themselves.
Yeah, I think that was one thing before I met you. I had wrote a post about this. I believe I shared it on our Facebook at About This Love. Quick plug, real quick, About This Love, and on our Instagram at About This Love. I had shared about the day that we met, and it was such a significant day for me. And I think that, like, if I could, I would have made it our anniversary day. Like, but it's still an anniversary to me. But prior to us meeting, I did take that time out. Like, I was really hurt. And I may have spoke about it on a different podcast, but prior to us meeting, I was really hurt. I had been, I felt like the Lord had, just woke me up one day and said, hey, I want you to start preparing to be a wife. And I'm just like, well, Lord, what does that look like? So I went to other women who I knew were wives. They were much older than I was. And I was asking them, like, hey, how do you like being a wife? How do you like being married? And it wasn't anything that I expected to hear. And not to say they weren't right or what they were saying wasn't true, but about their marriage. But I didn't feel like I was getting answers. And what I felt that they were telling me, I was very disappointed because they were much older. And what they were telling me was like, well, girl, you young. Go ahead and party. Girl, you got time for all that. Don't even worry about that. And I'm just like, but no, no, no. This is what was put on, in my heart. This is what the Lord has said to my spirit. And this is what I want to pursue, because the other outcome is just me, sleeping around, partying, just being unhappy, being empty. And so before I just went out and, signed up on like dating sites or whatever, it was just kind of like, okay, Lord, these are the things that I'm really struggling with. And at that time, I was struggling with it. I was struggling with, being the attention seeker, meaning, if anyone was to, want my number or reach out to me, and not anyone, of course, I had somewhat of an idea of standards, but if somebody was reaching out to me and it was like, hey, come out, come hang out, whether or not, I was on mommy duty that night, it's kind of like, well, yeah, maybe I should go out because what else do I got going on? But then it's like, after a while, I think I had to like turn my phone off, and I said, Lord, if it's me and you tonight and I'm just doing Bible study, and I know it sounds super religious, but it was just kind of like, well, what else do I have to look forward to? I really wanted to heal some areas in my heart. In that time, I actually grieved a relationship that I had been in for years as a teenager, which I didn't know I was waking up every day dwelling on that relationship, but I had grieved it. I threw away everything that was given to me from this person. I didn't sell it. I threw it away because I was like, nah, I don't even want the money from it. And I told Dill, I told you that,
Yeah.
and you was like, nah, I wouldn't have thrown that away. You was just bitter. I said, no, Dill, no, like, even like you didn't even get it. And I was just like, well, and I thought that was such a powerful time, because then once I met you, and it wasn't that like we met and we fell in love. It wasn't that we met and fell in love, but it was just that, hey, basically the way that we connected, I think that it was really pivotal at that time. You were saying some things like, well, once I realized that I guess we were moving into a relationship direction, I was like, oh, okay, well, I truly believe that the Lord has brought me to a place where I can be open to a relationship with you.
Yeah.
And I think that's the importance of kind of going back and sitting down and addressing your feelings, addressing your past with the Lord, and not thinking that somebody's going to heal you through that.
Yeah, it's oftentimes like you and I, we have conversations, and I always bring about people that's that we know with either my family or your family, and one of the things that I think about, like when I actually think about certain people, I'm like, years from now, this person will be at a retirement age, in a couple of years, and they have nothing to show for it, or they're not at a point where they financially can retire because they've squandered so much time and so many years, and for me, I know for a lot of people, that I know, that's well, not a lot. I mean, not a lot, but for some people that I
Mhm.
know that are very dear to me, that's the case, And I didn't want that to be the case for me. And I'm only saying that just to say, like, just kind of saying, like, as an example, it's not only just like coming to the age where you've ready to retire but can't, but just realizing that you've been in a relationship, you've been in a messy relationship for years, or you just had bad habits that you've been doing for a while that you probably should have stopped 5-10 years ago, but you never did. You never took the time to really address it. So now you're at the point where you're like, I'm ready to be in a serious relationship now, but I can't be in one. I'm just not at the capacity where I can be in one because of I have emotional trauma issues, or mental trauma and issues. Just coming to the point where you realize that you need to address whether it's
Mhm.
you sit with the Lord, or you sit down with a shrink, which I'm not trying to be funny. I'm not trying to be funny at all. Because people laugh, but it's like, no, you really, if you need to sit down with a shrink, that's fine. But what I don't want you to do is, I don't want you to get to the point in your life where you're like where you're older and you actually have to reflect back when you're older, but that time is really too late.
Oh, you mean like reflect back
Yeah,
on
because
on the time squandered?
yeah, time squander. Because I think about that. I'm 30 years old, and I think about what do I want to leave my wife and my children if something happened to me. You know what I'm saying? Like really working hard, not even financially, but for me, like I was thinking the other day, one of the most important things to me, even above like the race that my son will date or whatever, is that what's instilled in him is the character and nature and statues of God and Lord Jesus Christ. That's one of the things I was thinking about the other day. That is the most important thing to me. I don't care about who he married, a white woman, a black woman, Asian. I don't care about none of that. As long as he and she understand the nature of the Lord and walk in that, hey, I've done my job as a father. I'm fulfilled, But I'm just saying, like, the things that we oftentimes don't really think about. Like, what are you leaving to your children? What legacy are you writing for your life? Is
I
it
was
one of
gonna
is it one of chaos and trauma, or is it one of beauty and encouragement and healing?
Yeah, I was gonna say that there. I was gonna ask you, what about people who don't have children or don't have a spouse? But that is like, what is their lot in life? What legacy are they leaving behind? Because we hear about, there's so many celebrity stories that are coming out left and right, books, movies, just about, oh, they had such a tragic life, and it's like behind the glitz and glams and the, once the camera shut off, it's almost like, well, they lived a really crappy life and they were on drugs heavy, but the whole world loved them, right? But it's like, well, those who were close to them or those who were dear to them, didn't get to experience, the greatness, or didn't get to experience them fulfilling, their lot in life. And so, I mean, that was kind of bringing it back to bringing it full circle, is, kind of what our reasoning for taking off of doing the podcast,
Yeah,
because our main goal, like, yes, we want to share, we want to encourage, we want to provoke thought and provoke,
greatness in you.
greatness. Yeah, we want to provoke that light in you to just really shine. But how can we do that when behind the scenes we got chaos and darkness, wreaking havoc in our lives? And I mean, we're always reminded by that, by those who hold us accountable. And I mean, we just hope that this podcast, not that we can personally hold you accountable, but it just kind of puts a move on your heart. That's my song. You put, what's that? I'm not gonna
Oh
sing
no! Oh no!
it. That's our song. But we just hope that that really moves you in the direction to feel more comfortable with just kind of, I hate to say saying what's on your heart, because that could be all types of
Making
things,
those hard
but
decisions. What I would say.
making those hard decisions, even though it's going against what the majority is doing, what your peers are doing, what their highlight reels look like, but you're really getting some stuff situated behind the scenes. So we're gonna wrap it up for this episode, Dale.
Yeah, yeah. But I did want to say, thank you guys for listening. About This Love podcast. This season, you'll be hearing some podcasts from myself. You'll be hearing some from me and my wife, and you may be hearing some from her by herself. I'm not sure about that. It depends on what she decides to do. But I know you'll definitely be hearing some from me by myself and some with us together. So thank you for rocking with us. Always a pleasure. Have a good day. About This Love. We out.